Alright growers, it is Mike over here at Growtopia for the last video of the book. So as you can tell, just like with the last video, this book actually has a lot of information that's going to be growing on in here. So as you can tell, we're going to start off, I'm going to walk around this whole area showing you where everything is, and then showing you also the game plan of next season. So as we first enter into here, we're going to start off with the left and work our way to the right. So at the far top left corner, we have a tree, and right below that tree we have a strawberry. And that section back here is basically only going to be for the asparagus. So I'm going to be calling this my asparagus field. Now, of course, like I said, we do have weeds in here, but there are some asparagus. And the strawberries are back there. You can just see the tag right outside of it. So this whole section next to this bed is only going to be for asparagus. Now, yes, asparagus does like to migrate like a weed. So it's going to be a little tough. Once it finally takes off and starts going insane, it's going to fill in this whole area. But that's great. I don't mind it. I love asparagus. You could eat it raw. You can cook it. You can do whatever you want with it. As we migrate down, basically from the pole down to the corner of the bed and all the way back over to where the gate's going to be, where the gate is, I'm sorry. That was a weird way to word that sentence. Up to the next post and straight over to that one. This is going to be the cornfield. Now this field here is going to be tightly packed with corn, and it's going to be 4 rows across, straight all the way down, and I'm looking at estimating about half a foot from each corn that I plant. The ground's going to be completely roughed up. The mulch is going to be pushed to the side. I'm going to run a tiller through here, and with that being said, we'll be able to do the corn nicely. We're going to run a line in the ground. We're going to put all the corn seeds in the ground, direct sow them in, and then let it, water them in, and then as they start growing, they get taller like those two are, then we're going to come back and backfill it with the mulch, just so it keeps everything nice and moist. Now, of course, I do have 2 corn plants, or the only 2 that are growing, and unfortunately they're not really going to do anything. But I was screwing around with the golden Bathums, and I was curious to see how fast they grew versus the sweet corn. I would say a little bit quicker, but not really by much to make that much of a difference. As we jump over to this bed here, this bed is solely going to be 4 different items. On the bottom left section that we're looking over in this area, we're going to have cantaloupe, we're going to have watermelon to the right, we're going to have cauliflower and cabbage. So it's going to be split into 4 zones on this bed. That's going to be solely only those 4. The reason why is because the watermelon and the cabbage, watermelon and the cantaloupe like to run, right? So I'm figuring the watermelon's going to be in here and it can run out in this area, and the cantaloupe's going to run out of here and it can run into this area as well. The cauliflower will be nice and sitting in one spot, and the cabbage will sit on the other side. The hoops I might keep in here. I'm probably going to end up taking them out for the time being. Don't really know, but I definitely want to keep it the option that if I need to throw the cloth on it for like a couple days, I can, and it's not going to hurt anything. I'm not keeping it permanent like I did this year, and I screwed up a lot of stuff. As we migrate down to the next 2 beds here, now we got a couple other things going on. This was a prime example of too much in a small location, and like I said, you could see a lot of dead because they were fighting for nutrients. So these 2 beds are the 2 foot by 6 foot beds. That's an 8 foot by 4 foot bed. This bed down here is only going to be for zucchini, and the next bed over there is only going to be for squash. And what I'm going to end up doing is just like I did with the tomato beds, is I'm actually going to put a top trellis bar with strings coming down, because with this guy back here that has died off as a zucchini, that was really working out great with it on strings, and it was a lot easier because, for starters, if we go back over to here and you take a look down at the spaghetti squash, that spaghetti squash, when it was young, it was up here, and the older it got, it started sagging. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move on from that comment. So the older it got, it started sagging to the ground. So that means that if it was up on a string system and I was a way of supporting it, it wouldn't be getting closer and closer to the ground. It was great when it was up top, but now as it gets older, it's getting saggier. So with these being the zucchini and the squash beds, they're going to have the strings on top of it, so I could support them a lot better. And within those beds, each of them is going to have one basil plant, because the basil plants work out really good at keeping away pests. As we migrate to what's in front of the squash bed over there, on the corner we have a lime tree that's a tropical that's going to go inside for the winter. In the middle will be a beet bag. Next to it will be the potato bag like there is there. We have our cat mint plant here. The cat mint plant used to be up front. I've had this plant for over 10 years. I transferred it this year into the back. I'm going to clean it up a little bit more, but it works really great at attracting the bees and keeping a lot of everything else away. There'll be a beet bag on the other end of it. There'll be a potato bag there, and then we got the lemon tree on the end, or on the corner of here, and then on the end of it we have a blueberry that's hanging out. As we look over here at Tomato Street, in case you guys are wondering where that name came from, we have a massive nuttiness of plants. We have another strawberry that's back there. This is supposed to be an orange tree that didn't take off. It finally started to regrow, so I left it where it is. Now, on here I put zoning. So for Tomato Street, it's considered Zone 1. Zone 2 is that far section. Zone 3 is the back section, the section on the far side. Zone 3 is on the other side of Zone 2, and Zone 5 is on the other side of Zone 3. Now, with Zone 1, this is mainly on the corner, so on both sides of the bed, on this side and on the other side, on that side and the other side, I'm going to be putting sunflowers. Sunflowers work very great as attracting bees, and it's also very beautiful in your garden. This bed is going to be split in half. So basically what's going to happen is half of the bed running straight down to the end. On the back side, like it is right now, because you can see the way that the trellis is running, on the far back side is going to be mainly tomatoes. Now a lot of these strings are very close together. Most likely what I'm going to do is spread them out just so that everything can grow very nice and evenly. And we're going to run tomatoes against the back wall, mixed with the cucumbers as well, because the cucumbers and the tomatoes have been growing great together and nice, peaceful, and harmony. And of course as well, there's going to be basil. Basically basil is going to be everywhere. And I'm going to grab another marigold, plant up another one, and there'll be a marigold in this bed as well. In front of these plants, the way that I have it now, I'm going to run a straight line across, and that's where we're going to be running our I saw a weird leaf. We're going to be running our pepper plants. That means our bell peppers and our jalapenos and whatever other pepper plants we have. We're not going to be putting the beets, the turnips, and the radishes back in this section. We're going to be using this for all of the other plants that I have mentioned. As we migrate over to here, we're going to actually go up to the next one because that was Zone 1. We're going to now head over to Zone 2. And Zone 2 is this bed here, up to where the post is. Like I said before, on either side of the post there'll be sunflowers as well. We'll have marigolds, basil plants, and marigold, basil plants, and tomatoes growing all through here. So any place where you see the strings are going to be the indeterminate tomatoes. The tomatoes that grow continuously throughout the season. They do not have a determinate size they grow to. They will either be 4 feet, 5 feet, 12 feet, 16 feet. Remember, the top is 8 feet. This one's growing almost above 8 feet, and that one is probably sitting around 6.5 feet, but this one's about 8 feet right now. So anything that is a indeterminate tomato is growing on strings, and yet again, I do not trim or prune my tomato plants. I let them grow and I leave them growing. Even if they got dead leaves on them, I leave it on there. It does not affect the plant whatsoever. The less you trim on your tomatoes, the better. The only time I would say you want to fertilize your tomatoes is the homemade fertilizer that I make, which is from eggshells and from chicken bones. I mix it together and I sprinkle it around the base of the plants as soon as I start seeing flowering. I spread the mulch back, I sprinkle it around the base, I slide the mulch back over, and it will get watered in on the next go around of watering. I don't water it right away. I let nature take its course. If it's going to rain for 2 days, it's going to rain for 2 days. Don't have to worry about watering. The next zone over is Zone 3, which is basically the same as I stated before. It's going to be setting the same way. Sunflowers on all the corners. You'll have 4 sunflowers on this side, 4 sunflowers on that side as well. Obviously, we'll have the tomatoes, we'll have the basil, we'll have the marigolds, because so far I've had 0 pests with the basil and marigold mix. Everything works out perfect. I haven't had a single issue, and I'm just going to constantly keep rinse, wash, and repeat with that. Okay, now we're going to get back here. There's another strawberry plant next to this guy over here. So this section here, this multi-section, all the way down from one end to the other, at the same length of this bed, is where I'm going to put all my determinate tomatoes. So all the way through here is all of my determinants, and including my banana tree. All my determinate tomatoes are going to run straight along here. Because they grow to a certain size, like I stated, such as the Tiny Tims, which is a foot tall by about, I think, 6-8 inches wide, somewhere around there in that roughly ballpark. Along the back wall against the fence on the other side is where all of the determinate tomatoes are going to run, and there will also be basil in there as well. Now I've come up with a game plan on how I'm going to be planting how much basil, and there's a lot of basil plants that I am actually going to be planting. We do use basil a lot, and basil does work very well, and I feel like the more basil I have, it doesn't hurt. It ain't going to make it worse. It ain't going to cause any problems. It might just help even more. And I have a whole little system that I'm going to show you guys on what I estimated on how many basil plants I'm going to start growing for this area, and I'll be inundated with basil. Alright, I want to make sure I covered everything. So, being that I have quite this intricate layout of where everything's going to go, that's great. Now, there's a lot of things that I haven't mentioned at all, such as like the eggplants that are currently right there. And if you guys didn't see them, I have okra. Now, okra I think can grow to like 8 to 12 feet tall. I got okra that's back here as well. And there's okra here. There's another okra plant that's over there. Now, stuff like the eggplants and the okra, eggplants you could actually bring in for the winter, and they'll grow all winter long inside your house, and then you can bring them back out. I'm basically going to have what's known as floating crops. So the okra, once it really gets established, it kind of needs a permanent home. So I'm kind of thinking that the okra, because it's going to be a year-round plant that can grow really big, it's probably going to be living with the asparagus, because that's a nice zone for it. And the eggplant, I'm basically going to find a spot to put it here and there amongst the beds. They'll be either amongst the beds or even just on the ground in front of the beds or near the beds. As long as the tag follows along with it, I'm not going to lose it. The eggplant might also even go along with the cucumber, with the zucchinis and the squashes. So they're going to find a home. And other stuff, other plants that I didn't really mention that I do grow, which I think was all of them except for the eggplant and the okra. Okra and eggplant are first ones for me this year, amongst a lot of things, but definitely okra. I've never really had okra in my life, so I've had it here and there, but never as a staple. It's going to be kind of just tossed in and growing amongst everything else, kind of just checking on my plants while I'm in here. I can't wait to bite into one of these jalapenos. I'll definitely do that on video for you guys, because I do love hot stuff. Ooh, look, there's a tomato back here. It's always good to take a peek at things. Maybe slip into here. Excuse me, cucumber. There's a tomato that landed. Always jump in and grab your tomatoes. There's another little tomato back here as well. I got 2 of them. What else do we got in here? It looks like it. 2 small tomatoes. All right. So yeah, that's it, guys, for the orchards video on the booklet. Definitely, I would say if you're not doing this, you should definitely do it. Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to show you guys my next thing on the book. When I talked about notes that are off to the side, this is one of those situations when I talk about it. So go back here. So really plain. Anyway, so on the side here, I started writing out these notes on what is what goes where, and what is needed. So as we go down the line, as we said, this is zone 1 that has the peppers and the cucumbers and the tomatoes together. Then we got zone 2, which is mainly tomatoes. Zone 3 is tomatoes. Zone 4 and zone 5. So as we go down the line, we have tomatoes. Tomato Street down here. It's indeterminate tomatoes, aka zone 1. Sow seeds January 1st, 10 plants. That means that I'm sowing 10 plants January 1st in the nursery. And it's not just tomato, it's all kinds of tomatoes, all the different varieties of tomatoes we have. Then zone 4 is determinate tomatoes, which is back here, which is on the other side of zone 2. There, we're going to sow seeds January 1st as well, and we're going to do 10 plants. As we jump down to zone 2, which is right here, we're going to be sowing seeds February 1st that are indeterminate tomatoes, and we'll be doing 8 plants because there's 8 strings available. Zone 5, which is the back bottom right determinate tomato location, we're going to be doing that March 1st, 10 plants. And then zone 3, which is the bottom left of it, for the indeterminate tomatoes, we're going to be sowing those seeds April 1st and 7 plants. Why am I doing it on different months? Well, for starters, I want to stagger out my growing season. So, being I was planting seeds in the pods inside my nursery at different times when I got a tomato plant, that's why the tomatoes that are growing over there are all still producing right now in September, is because I staggered my plantings. So as they grow and they start to look like they're about to die off, depending on where the season is, I would start growing more. Now, I was planting seeds all the way up until July, so you could still keep growing. You just got to look at your harvest date on those. As we go further down the line, we're going to look at our basil. Now, in zone 1, I have 5 basil plants. In zone 2, I have 4. In zone 3, I got 2. In zone 4, I got 3. And in zone 5, I got 3. How did I come up with those numbers? Well, for zone 1, I chose that every 2 tomato plants gets 1 basil. The same thing for zone 2 and zone 3. Every 2 plants get 1 basil plant. When it comes down into the determinate tomatoes, because they're going to be on the back side of the indeterminate tomatoes, I'm going to be doing every 3 tomato plants is 1 basil. That's how I came up with those numbers. When we go over to the cucumbers for zone 1, sow seeds 1 month apart, a total of 5 plants. First seeds start January 1st. So the first time when I start the seeds for the indeterminate tomatoes, for Tomato Street, the tomatoes and the cucumbers will start at the same time. And that is because the reason why I want to do 5 plants is because there's 10 plants in here, so every 2 plants gets 1 cucumber plant, which is honestly a good amount. And because I'm spacing them 1 month apart, it's going to be the same thing as with the tomatoes, is that I'm staggering my planting so that I have a longer growing season with them. So I hope you guys got something out of this. I know there was a lot of talking involved in this one versus the last couple videos, but if you're not doing this, you should definitely get on this, because this will make your life a lot easier, and you can go back and go, oh, okay, that's right, I'm putting squash in here, I'm putting zucchini in here only. Okay, this is where my peppers and my tomatoes and cucumbers are going to be, and this is where only my tomatoes are. Nothing else is growing in there except for obviously the marigold, sunflower, and the basil will be in there as well. Just as I said before, like the okra, I can go in here and write okra as well. For my eggplants, because they're like a squash and a zucchini where they have a vine and they have a big ball on them, I could take those eggplants, and if I'm light on zucchini or light on squashes, I could throw on the bottom of here eggplants. Let's say like the top section of bed is all squash and the zucchini filled up the whole bed. I can go to the squash bed and throw in my eggplants in here, so that next year I do the same thing and I'll just write eggplants, so that I know that that will be a split bed. Now, the reason why I'm not going to do that with the squash, I'll do that more with the zucchini, because there's not that many different varieties of zucchinis that I'm really interested in. I love the Black Beauty zucchini, so I'm going to be really focusing on planting those. So that means most likely I'll throw the eggplants in the bottom, and because there'll be a trellis just like these beds are with strings coming down, I can grab them on with strings. They can grow up nice and neatly, and no big issues. So anyway, guys, like, subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and hopefully this will be the last video for today. if I don't have any more ideas. But now with all this being done, I can now go to a blank page and I can start keeping track, basically, because now I can start writing it on both sides, and I can start keeping track of what's planted, what time it was planted, where it's planted, and so on and so forth. So anyway, guys, later, and look out for the next video. Definitely subscribe, share it with your friends, get out there, you know, follow along, buy a book. Doesn't have to be this kind, buy any kind of book. And just honestly, this right here is going to be the best guide for you on where you constantly put stuff, and you can always keep, you know, changing it. I could draw this up again if I wanted to and have, you know, a fall planting schedule, but this is working out really good because there's a lot of the stuff that's in here is going to constantly continue on through the fall. And you know, once the corn is done, I can even fill this up with like pumpkins if I wanted to, if I can get the pumpkins to finally grow for me. So like, let's say I'm done with my corn, which if I was growing corn right this year, I would still have corn growing. But if I had, like, you know, because I know pumpkins right now are a hot thing, so pumpkins should have been planted a while ago. So with that being said, maybe, okay, hey, you know, I'll throw pumpkins along this section here in the ground and let the pumpkins grow wild over there. So you could always play around with it, but definitely having this as your baseline is definitely a good thing to have. So anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.